In this lecture, we are going to start exploring a second tool called SASS. This lecture will be a brief overview of the language. SASS is a topic that deserves a course of its own. I encourage you to look at other courses or tutorials to learn more about SASS. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the official site for SASS. SASS is a programming language for CSS. CSS is not known for being an intelligent language. Features like functions or conditional statements are non-existent in CSS. SASS was introduced for extending CSS. We can perform various actions, from defining functions to looping through an array of data. SASS is an extremely powerful language. However, SASS is not supported in the browser. It must be compiled into CSS. Luckily, there's a package for handling this process. In your editor, open the command line. Let's install the SASS package with the following command: npm install SASS. Out of the box, Vite supports SASS. We do not need to configure SASS. This means we can start writing SASS right away. In the previous lecture, we removed the import statement for our CSS file. Rather than importing a CSS file, let's import a SASS file. In the project, rename the style.css file by changing its extension to SCSS. The extension for writing SASS is SCSS. Next, let's open the main.js file. At the top of the file, import the main.scss file. Next, let's launch the server. In the command line, run the npm run dev command. For the rest of this section, you should always have this command running. Let's check out the app in the browser. As you can see, the styles are being applied to our elements. Otherwise, the text would not be centered. Vite was able to import the SASS file, compile it, and include it with the bundle. We can prove this behavior by opening the Elements panel with the developer tools. Search for a style tag in the head section of the document. If you know CSS, you already know SASS. SASS supports all CSS features from selectors to variables. It does not attempt to override the language. It simply extends it. Head back to the editor. In the SASS file, let's start exploring some of the cool features that SASS has to offer. The first feature is functions. It's common to apply color effects to an element during an event. For example, if a visitor hovers their mouse over an element, the color might change. Let's give that a try. Add an H1 selector. Set the color property to the following value, #CC3244. Next, add another selector called H1 hover. The value for the color property will be a function called darken. The darken function is not available in CSS. It's defined by the SASS language. This function will return a new color with a darker shade. Functions are written similarly to JavaScript functions. It's the name followed by a pair of parentheses. It has two arguments, which are the color and the percentage. Let's pass in the same color as before, which was #CC3244. The second argument is a percentage value. The higher the value, the darker the color. Typically, I like to use any value between 5 and 15%. Let's use 15%. Switch over to the browser. You shouldn't have to refresh the page. Vite will automatically reload the page for you during updates. If we look at the heading, the color is red. We can hover our mouse over the color to view the new color. As you can see, we do not need to calculate a darker color ourselves. SASS is capable of picking a color for us. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the list of functions you can use to change colors. Admittedly, the official documentation isn't that easy to read or navigate. I encourage you to take your time with it and experiment with some of them. Alright, let's continue exploring other features. Another cool feature of SAS is nesting. Head back to the editor. Switch over to the main.js file. Let's wrap the word Vite with a pair of span tags. It's not uncommon to style nested elements. Back in the CSS file, we can change the color of the span element by creating a selector called h1span. With SAS, we can take a different approach. Instead of typing this selector, we can add the span selector from within the h1 selector. Nested selectors are allowed. During compilation, the selector will be transformed into h1 span. Initially, this syntax may look weird, but there are two benefits to this feature. Firstly, the precedence in CSS becomes clearer. When your code is formatted like this, it can be easier to see which CSS properties will dominate others. The second benefit is that you won't end up repeating the same selectors since it's easier to tell where you've written them. Inside the span tag, change the color property to blue. In some cases, you may need to reference the parent selector. A perfect example of this scenario would be the hover pseudo-selector. We could nest this selector inside the h1 selector like so. However, this solution won't completely work. This selector will produce a weird selector. It would be transformed into h1:hover. We don't want this. We want the same selector we had before. SAS provides a selector called the ampersand selector. Replace the h1 selector with the ampersand symbol. The ampersand symbol will represent the parent selector. SAS will replace this symbol with the parent selector. This will result in the selector being h1:hover. Let's try testing our code by switching to the browser. The span tag content will be the color blue. We can hover over this element to change the color to a darker color. Great! We've successfully learned another feature of SAS. SAS is a great language. It's definitely worth learning. I encourage you to play around with it and see what you can do. A single lecture doesn't do it justice, but it should suffice for now. Before I end things, I want to say that you don't have to be a master of SAS. We won't be using it heavily in this course. Just because Vite supports a tool doesn't mean you're forced to use it. We'll be focusing mostly on Vue, but it's always good to know what SAS is and how it works.